Well, hello students, and welcome to Learn Piano Now with Daniel Joyner. I hope you're looking forward to learning something new today because I am looking forward to teaching you. Now, have you ever wanted to add more color and more flavor to your chords but weren't quite sure how to start? Well, today's lesson is for you because this lesson is on triad variations and how to add them into your own music to make it more colorful. Now, let's dive into the lesson. So for today, we're going to talk about 4 different triad variations that can add a lot of color to what you already do. Now, a triad, as we have discussed in previous videos, is a 3-note chord built in thirds, and it looks like this. This is a C major triad, okay? And then we also have minor triads as well. This would be a C minor triad. And these variations are for your different types of triads to make them sound a little different and more interesting, and you can also resolve them back to the original chord. Now let me show you the 4 different types, and then we'll show you how to apply them to your own music. First, we're going to talk about the 2 chord, okay? So this is called a C2, or a 2 chord, and it's replacing the 3rd of the C triad, 1, 3, and 5, with the 2nd of the C scale. So you're playing 1, 2, 5 of the C scale instead of 1, 3, 5. If we were to transpose that to another chord, let's say the F chord, right? Instead of playing 1, 3, 5 of the F scale, we would be playing 1, 2, 5 of the F scale. Okay, so a 2 chord is a triad variation that substitutes the 3rd for the 2nd. Okay, now the second variation is called the add 2. Okay, so the add 2 is where instead of replacing one note with another, you're adding a note to the triad. So you take your 3 notes in the triad and you add the 2nd to that. Okay, now you can play all those notes together as a cluster, or you can take out the root to make it less crunchy, and you can put it in the left hand. Since your left hand's probably going to be playing the root anyway, you can leave it out and it'll sound very nice as well. Or if you like this sound, you can resolve the 2nd down to the triad. So you can resolve the add 2 down to the regular triad, or you can alternate them like that. Okay? The 3rd type of triad variation is called the sus chord, and some people call this the sus 4. All right, and also just a quick note on the first triad variation I gave you, the C2, some people call that a sus 2, for instance. But the sus 4, or the sus chord, is this. So instead of playing the 1st, 3rd, and 5th of the scale to make your triad, you're playing the 1st, the 4th, and the 5th of the scale. And that usually resolves down to the regular triad. So you have a C sus and then a regular C triad. That can be done on pretty much any chord. So if we were to do that over the F chord, right, that would be, instead of 1, 3, 5, we'd be going 1, 4, 5 of the F scale and then back down. Or for the G, take a regular G major triad, 1, 3, 5, and you go up to the 4th note of that scale, G scale, and use 1, 4, and 5, and then you can resolve that back to the regular triad. Now, the last triad variation in the number 4 in the sequence is the add 4, or the 4 chord. So in this triad variation, we're not replacing, we're actually adding. So we're adding the 4th note of the chord in with the 3rd, and in this triad variation, I tend to leave the 5th of the chord out. So instead of playing 1, 3, 5, we're kind of playing 1, 3, 4. We're adding the 4 to the chord, and we're leaving the 5th out to avoid it being too crunchy or too dissonant. Okay? And that usually sounds like this. And a very popular way to play this one is actually in first inversion, where you take the C and put it on top. Okay? And all these triad variations can be inverted as well. We're going to go through that in a minute. So we have the 3rd, the 4th, and the root here. That's a C4 or C add 4. Okay, so those are the 4 types of triads. Now you may ask, what in the world do I do with them and how do I put them into my own music? I'm glad you asked. Let me show you. Okay, so first of all, the 2 chord, okay? Remember back when we did our C2? That 2 variation, that can be added to all your diatonic major triads. So when you go through your diatonic chords, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 1 in that key, you can use them on all the ones that are major. So we have all our diatonic major chords are 1, 4, and 5. Those are the 3 chords that are major in the whole diatonic series. So for each of those chords, we could substitute the regular triad with a 2 chord. So the C2 would look like that, F2 would look like that, and G2 would look like that. Okay? So if we were to take a chord progression, let's say 1, 5, 6, 4, 1, 5, that's G major, 6, and then 4, we could of course do the 2 variation for each one of those. And does it sound great on all of them? That's up to you to decide. But I'm going to give you an example of how I would use it. I might use it just on the 1 and on the 4 chords because I think it sounds best on those 2. So I'm going to use it here on the 1, and I'm going to play the 5 regular, then the 6 regular, and then the 4 I'm going to use that variation. Okay? Now, you might ask, well, what about the closest inversions? What about our use of the closest inversions for these chords? Well, that's a good point. I'm glad you asked. So when you do the inversions of each chord, where they're the closest, like we've done in previous videos, you get this configuration. Root position C, first inversion G, first inversion A minor, and second inversion F. And we can also make our 2 chords, we can invert them to find the closest inversion. So we play C2, G, then A minor, and then instead of going down here, we play our F2 here. So instead of in root position, we just play the lower inversion. We put that C on the bottom. So we play the 5th of the chord, the root, and the 2nd. See how we did that? Pretty cool, huh? I think so. All right, now, let's talk about the added 2, or the add 2. The add 2 can be used on pretty much any diatonic chord that is major or minor. So most of the diatonic chords, it will work over very nicely. So let's go back to our progression, shall we? Our 1, 5, 6, 4 progression. So 1, 5, 6, 4. We can literally use it over every chord in that progression if we want. So right, and then 5, that adds a lot of color, and then 6, and then, so 1, I added the 2 to that chord, and then now you don't have to resolve them like that. You can just keep them as added 2s, or you can keep the root in there as well if you like a chunkier sound. I tend to leave the root out in my right hand and let the left hand take the root. Okay, now what about the sus chord? Where can that be used? Well, it's most commonly used over the 5 chord, but it can be used over other chords as well. It can be used over major or minor chords, but the most common is on the 5. So let's look at that. So we have 1, 5, and instead of our regular 5, we're going to play G sus. So remember, 1, 4, 5 is a sus chord. So we play 1, 5, 6, 4. But you might ask, well, what about the closest inversions? Aha! So we can use that. Instead of our first inversion G chord like we would normally play, we would play first inversion G sus, which would be from here, you just take the G and you put it on top. So you go C, and then G sus, and then A minor, and then F. And then you can also resolve it. So C2, G sus, regular G, A minor, F. All right, and then so we'll have a couple of more examples of that in a minute. But next is C4. So on C4, we did this, and the add 4 or the 4 chord, you would play that most typically on the 5 chord. Okay, so on the 5 chord, again, instead of the regular G, you would use G4, which would be that, and then we're going to put it in first inversion. We'll put that G on top, and it sounds better. It's real crunchy. It has a lot of dissonance to it, but it's very popular in modern music. So we have our 1 chord, then our 5 chord, and it's a G4 or G add 4, then our 6, and then our 4. So those are some basic ways to apply those 4 different triad variations to your own music. Now let's go over a couple of more combinations where you can add multiple triad variations within that chord progression. So let me give you an example. So here is one scenario: C2, G sus, A minor add 2, then F. So C2, G sus, then A minor add 2, then F. And then the next scenario is C add 2, then G sus, then A minor, then F2. And you can even resolve the F2 to the regular triad. Okay, next example is C2, G4 or G add 4, then A minor add 2, then F add 2. That's a really colorful one. Okay, and then the final one, which is the most adventurous, is playing around with the sus chord for every chord in that progression. So I'm going to put a sus chord on everything, and I'm going to show you how that sounds. So we're going to start out with a C sus, which is 1, 4, 5 of C, and then we're going to resolve it, and then we're going to start out, and we're going to a G sus to regular G. Then we're going to do an A minor sus or A sus to an A minor chord, and then normally when we have F, we would do this on an F sus, right? We play the 4th of the F scale, 1, 4, 5, but in this case we're in the key of C, and this note doesn't belong to the C scale, so I'm going to sharp it and make it to B. This is called the sharp 4. So I'm actually going to do like a sus sharp 4 on the F chord, and it's a little tense, but it resolves nicely. And you can also put it in first inversion, right? So we're going to start with C sus, regular C, G sus, regular G, A sus, A minor, then F, sus sharp 4, and then back to 1. Now, isn't that pretty? So I hope you guys learned a lot today and are able to start immediately applying these principles into your own chord progressions and make them more colorful. Well, that's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. If you did, please press the subscribe button on my channel for weekly piano videos on various topics. And we will see you in the next video. Bye for now, guys.